Now? All right. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the press conference of the fourth G20 Finance Ministers Central Bank Governor meeting, October 13, 2022. We have just finished the meeting, and now we are delighted to have the co-chair of the meeting here with us, Her Excellency Madam Minister Sri Mulyani, Finance Minister of Republic of Indonesia, and of course His Excellency Governor Peri Warjio. We will have a short presentation from the two speakers, followed by a Q&A session. I should remind you to ask a short, direct question due to very limited time we have here. So without further ado, we welcome Her Excellency Finance Minister of Republic of Indonesia, as well as Governor Peri Warjio. The floor is yours, Ibu. Go.
Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague from media. Thank you for joining our media briefing today to update you on the result of the fourth and final meeting of the G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors under the Indonesia G20 presidency. Governor Peri and I have chaired the meeting today. We meet again as the global economic situation has become more and more challenging. I do not think it is an exaggeration to say that the world is in dangerous condition. The policy responses need to be specific, clear, coordinated, and well communicated. Not only a normative macroeconomic policy mix. And yet this is the most important challenging task. How we are going to coordinate when there is really a very, very strong, sometimes trade-off, severe trade-off. Many countries are now facing very difficult trade-off in designing the right policy for this perfect storm. The trade-off between achieving stability versus preserving growth and employment, the trade-off between policy instrument, fiscal policy or monetary policy, or structural policy to stabilize the price at the cost of weakening of the economy or even potentially creating recession. Or how we are going to continue recovery and supporting growth while the inflation is actually at the real pressure for almost all economy. So we are now facing increasing and compounding risk. High inflation, weak growth, energy and food insecurity or crisis, climate risk, and geopolitical fragmentation. We have already seen faster than anticipated global monetary policy tightening, with many advanced and emerging economies raising their interest rate significantly, with this creating spillover risk across the world. So war, surging commodity prices, as well as the increasing or creating increased global inflation that is followed by the increasing interest rate and tightening liquidity, definitely creating a huge risk for the country which is already in the debt distress. This is not only for the low-income country, but also middle-income country and even advanced countries. We expect the global situation to remain tough in this year, 2022, and possibly extend into 2023. We should not dismiss the possibility of an increased risk recession. So these complex global economic challenges require strong leadership and collective action from the G20. This is the group of 20 countries which comprise 85% of the world economy, that they should also be able to protect the livelihood of endangered people while also bringing the world to a strong, sustainable, balanced, and inclusive growth. a huge task with the current environment and challenges. The economic and the complex global situation, because this is not only just economic factor but geopolitical factor, which is requiring us to cooperate even more, to coordinate and synchronize the policy, which is becoming so difficult under the fragmented situation. How we are going to be able to develop the right macroeconomic policy, mix between fiscal, monetary, as well as structural policy, and how we are going to continue to achieve a common goal, recovering the economy, and how to coordinate in an effective way. The appropriate policy mix is becoming one of the most important discussions that we are having under this G20, especially on the first session. How we see the threat to the global economy in the form of high inflation, high food, energy, fertilizer price, as well as, of course, the geopolitical tension, which is also creating additional to the supply side disruption. So our meeting today is certainly critical for the G20's credibility. And I must say that actually during the current and this 2 days meeting, all members country underlined that it is very important to continue preserve this G20 as the premier economic forum for cooperation. So here we have the opportunity to deliver the other commitment that we've already made during our initial meeting, that is back in February 2022. We are also delivering a lot of action, which we also proudly achieve under this during this 2 days past meeting under the G20 economic meeting. On the first issue related to the global economy, we are all saying, regardless the source of the uncertainty and the problem, we want to strengthen our coordination and harmonizing action on issues that are critically important for global economic stability, prosperity, including related to the food and energy crisis. The second one, we also strengthen our commitment to ensuring the long-term financial resilience of international financial architecture. This is especially important when the world, especially many countries, especially again low-income emerging countries, they are finding in the position of debt distress with a high interest rate and also the debt burden, which is already high even after the pandemic. Our commitment, including the global financial safety net, the special drawing right allocation to support most vulnerable, and strengthen the multilateral development bank capital adequacy framework. This is being done while ensuring the implementation of the common framework on debt treatment beyond DSSI. The third issue, we reaffirm our commitment to significantly progress on the financial sector regulation and supervisory. We have aimed to strengthen the international financial system in facing the development of the financial system, including crypto asset activities and market, while harnessing digitalization to increase productivity, a sustainable and inclusive economy, and also a strategy to strengthen digital financial literacy. And then the fourth issue, we reaffirm our commitment to advance the 2022 Sustainable Finance Report, which in addressing the priority identified in the G20 Sustainable Finance Roadmap, which has developed a transition finance framework to recognize climate transition activity, including energy transition, and ways to enhance the accessibility and affordability of sustainable finance. The last one, we reaffirm our commitment to revitalize infrastructure investment in a sustainable, inclusive, and affordable way, including tools to leverage private sector participation, mobilizing financing to cities and regions, and increase digital and infratech investment. Also to increase sustainable and transformative infrastructure investment. Finally, we also reaffirm our commitment to the implementation of the international tax package. This is very important, the last session, in which we are discussing about two pillars and the implementation of these two important achievements. Also, the implementation of the Asia Initiative Bali Declaration on International Taxation. So our meeting today in Washington, D.C. is our fourth and also the final meeting of the finance minister and central bank governor under the Indonesia G20 presidency. Despite the fact that we face many challenges, differences in view, and especially from the very beginning, there are quite a lot of huge gaps that we have to create an effective bridge by our presidency, and also escalating geopolitical conflict, war in Ukraine, which exacerbated and worsening the economic situation. Indonesia presidency has been able to maintain the unity of this G20 as a premier global forum for economic and financial policy. This is certainly has been welcomed and also supported and agreed by all G20 member countries. As you all know that India will take over the G20 presidency in 2023, including, of course, on the finance track. The ministers and governors have been briefed about the proposed main priority agenda from the 2023 India presidency. Certainly, with all our support, and also I wish India in this case all the best so that they can continue providing a platform as well as a forum of G20 in coordinating our best effort in alleviating obstacles and averting the risk of the global economic downturn. We do believe that our meeting today will provide some hope that despite the challenges and differences, the G20 can still produce concrete outcomes that can help the world. Thank you. Pak Berry.
Thank you. Very good afternoon to all of you. Since the very beginning of our presidency, we continue emphasizing that the G20 need to work together to advance global critical issues, finding concrete and collective solutions to secure the recovery. Despite the divergent views within the group, during Indonesia presidency, G20 continue to progress in many important issues as legacies that need to be passed to the next India presidency in 2023. Just to add what Minister Sri Mulyani already mentioned, let me just out number achievement, deliverable, concrete, relating especially the central banks. First, on the addressing the global economic issues, G20 remain committed to enhancing macro policy, preserving financial stability and long-term fiscal sustainability, and safeguarding against the downward risk and negative spillover. In this regard, central bank independence is crucial to achieving this goal and buttressing monetary policy credibility. In this regard, the G20 remains committed to addressing the current global challenges, high inflation, to ensure well-calibrated, well-planned, and well-communicated policy to address this issue. G20 central banks are strongly committed to achieving price stability in line with their respective mandate. To that end, we are closely monitoring the impact of price pressure on inflation expectation and will continue to calibrate the pace of monetary policy tightening in a data-driven and clearly communicated manner. Nonetheless, as the challenges of global economic in this very difficult circumstances becoming more complex, then policy cannot be only rely on one instrument. In this regard, also, policymakers face this difficult trade-off as we seek to balance between the economic recovery and maintaining stability. In this regard, G20 reiterated commitment to enhancing global finance resilience and will continue to monitor the risk of increasing capital flows volatility, negative spillover, and uneven market condition. In this regard, IMF issues a review on capital flows management continue to be advanced. To maintain stability and limit adverse selection, the G20 also discuss and look forward to further progress in the operation of the IMF integrated policy framework and welcome the BIS macro financial stability framework. This framework, we do believe that will serve among the policymakers, including the central bank, how to address the many complex challenges. On financial sector issue, the G20 has discussed access strategy and mitigation the scarring effect in the financial sector, how global policy action to increase the resilience, including also against cross-border spillover, addressing identify structural vulnerable in non-bank financial intermediation from a systemic perspective. Additionally, the G20 continue to discuss the pressing issue from crypto asset market development and strategy to enhance risk monitoring while taking into account the novel feature crypto asset and harnessing their benefit. In this context, G20 member they welcome the FSB work on this topic and look forward for further deliberation coordination. On the cross-border system and central bank digital currency, the G20 welcome the continuous exploration of how central bank digital currency could potentially be designed to facilitate cross-border payment system. We look forward for the G20 report on the progress of the roadmap on collective action to enhance cross-border payment arrangement for to be delivered in the coming leaders summit in November 2022. We also make progress on the cross-border payment, including also Indonesia presidency to coordinate with BIS how to advance the cross-border payment system interconnectivity and interoperability, including Indonesia presidency also initiated ASEAN 5 cross-border payment system connectivity as a showcase of regional implementation of G20 roadmap for enhancing cross-border payment roadmap. On CBDC agenda, G20 explore how CBDC could potentially be designed to facilitate cross-border payment system. In this regard, discussion continue both from the macro financial challenges as well as on how to design the technology. In this regard, Indonesia presidency initiated to jointly with the BIS to conduct CBDC seminar 2020. Yesterday, Indonesia G20 presidency also organized CBDC seminar on how to understanding the design and technology of the CBDC. On the financial inclusion, G20 continue the Indonesia presidency to advance how financial inclusion framework harnessing the benefit of digitalization to boost productivity and foster sustainable and inclusive economic, especially for SME, women, youth, as well as for underserved groups guided by G20 2020 Financial Inclusion Action Plan. I think those issue that under Indonesia presidency on a number of policy from the policy, financial sector, as well as also cross-border payment, CBDC, and financial inclusion. Of course, the detail that we can also elaborate on the Q&A question. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister and Governor. Now we will have a Q&A session. If you'd like to ask the question, please raise your hand and your name, please. So due to the very limited time that we have now, just ask a short and brief question and direct question. Please in the front and then followed by your name, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to question. My name is Watan Okubo from Japanese daily paper, the Mainichi newspapers. My question is about the foreign currency market. So, the US dollar is very strong against the other countries' currency, which has a negative effect on the world economy, including developing countries. So what kind of the discussion do you have in the meeting about this issue? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mega?
Thank you. First question, what's the concrete result from this meeting compared to the last meeting in Bali? What's the concrete progress? And the second question, how you handle the conflict between Russia and G7 in this meeting? The question for both Bu Sri Mulyani and Pak Perry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mega. Gentleman in the back, I will go back to you, please. Gentleman in the back, please. Right.
I would like to, my name is Sanjay Prastio. I would like to ask about the risk. There is one of the main concern is about debt distress and then the energy transitions. I would like to ask about how Indonesia as actual and G20 in general will actually can manage the risk of stranded assets, and then if we keep investing on fossil fuel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gentlemen, in the front, please. Thank you. We will have 5 questions for the first.
Thank you. This is Lalit Jha from PTI Press Trust of India. I wanted to ask you about, in the age of increasing geopolitical fragmentation, how is it possible to have consensus within the G20 on some of the critical issues facing the world today? And secondly, I'd like to have your take on the proposed priority agenda for 2023, as Indians have briefed you people in the Washington, D.C. this week. Thank you.
All right, we have 5 questions, but Kemudian and Bu probably will continue after this. Please.
What? I do it. Okay. I think the discussion we are, especially for Andre, related to the Indonesia managed stranded asset, we are not talking in very specific on that. At first, we are talking about on the debt distress with the current situation in which the high prices driving the inflation up, responded by the monetary policy. We underline that many monetary policy authority need to establish their credibility in restoring the stability of the price, and that's why they have to act accordingly. And independency of the central bank need to be continued, respected and strengthened. I think this is going to be one of the most, as I mentioned earlier, a very challenging trade-off that in restoring the stability, especially in dealing with the inflation, may have the unintended consequences in terms of the weak economy, as well as the potential worsening debt distress of many countries, not only low-income country, but also middle-income country and high-income country. So the discussion about the debt distress, of course, within the G20 framing, within the context of how a group as well as globally first have the ability to use the common framework in dealing with this debt problem, especially for the low and middle income countries. how we are going to be able to create more predictability as well as reliability on dealing with the debt problem for country. The second one, related to the global financial safety net, that is whether the IMF have the ability in terms of the resource to support many of the country that is going to be in this situation. Third one, also asking the multilateral development bank to use their balance sheet through the capital adequacy framework so that they are going to be able to continue or strengthening or increasing support for many countries in a difficult situation, especially on a financing asset, not only for their own debt distress problem, but also in terms of addressing global public goods like climate change related issue or challenges. So these are all the three important elements dealing with the debt distress. That is the ability to use the common framework for settling or restructuring or handling the debt situation. The second one is the global financial safety net. That is the ability of the IMF to support, and that's why maybe Perry is going to talk more about the SDR and the quota reform. And then the third one is how we can ask the MDBs to step up using their existing balance sheet through the common capital adequacy framework. That is stretching ability to lend more, which is then can help many countries, especially under current circumstances when the market is so sometimes volatile and the tendency of the interest rate is increasing. On the first question about Forex, let Perry is going to address this question. But certainly, I think what is the most important is how we are going to synchronize and coordinate more. Sometimes the room to maneuver is becoming so narrow or even now has been eliminated. So the trade-off is becoming so painful. But we have to take sometimes a painful step in order for us to be able to restore again the stability and the recovery of the economy. It's not going to be easy. This is one of the most important in which all central bank governor as well as Minister of Finance then talking about each country's situation, but at the same time also very mindful about the potential spillover effect for other countries because we are the G20 biggest economy in the world. So each action will definitely not only affecting your own jurisdiction or economy, but can also affect regionally or globally. What is the concrete progress? Well, this is the final progress. Indonesia presidency, especially on the finance track, has already, from the very beginning, outlining our agenda and what we call the expectation of the result. First, on a global economic and scarring effect due to the pandemic. I think we've also addressing the issue and becoming also recognizing the challenging task because of the increasing inflation, food and energy prices that created a much more challenging task for both fiscal as well as monetary policy to deal with. But at the same time, we also addressing the issue on the scarring effect, some of the recovery of the economy, which is quite good, including Indonesia in this case. Indonesia has been recovered, the growth on the second quarter or expected on the third quarter to be able to address the scarring effect and also continue recovery. But at the same time, this is not only the only issue, which is of course very important, especially not only the global economic situation and post-pandemic scarring effect, but the new crisis like the food and energy crisis, which is now complicated, including the war and geopolitical situation. So on the first issue, this is really remain a very dynamic, and I think this is the topic which is going to be discussed also in the IMF, IMFC, and also for the next India presidency. The second agenda, which is Indonesia has been very successful, is when we are creating pandemic preparedness response. This is one of the most important agenda that President Jokowi has already mentioned during the Rome when we are taking over the presidency. And this particular agenda will make a huge progress actually from the very beginning that the agreement is not there. And by the end of this meeting, we were able to establish financial intermediary facility, FIF, under the trustee within the World Bank to strengthen WHO, 1.4 billion, contributor 15 parties, 12 from G20 and 3 from international organization. So that's really a huge success. And we are now focusing more on governance and how you are going to execute and strengthening the pandemic preparedness. I think this is being recognized quite widely. The third one, maybe on the international financial architecture, Pak Perry is going to mention later on, but a lot of progress on that area, including the agreement on the G20 to make sure that we are going to ask Multilateral Development Bank to use their resources and capacity to respond to the need of many developing and emerging countries. The third and the fourth one is on the infrastructure. I think we achieved quite a lot of not only in agreeing that infrastructure continue very important, but how we are going to be able to develop quality, sustainable infrastructure with the better governance and especially in mobilizing private sector funding to develop infrastructure. This is issue which is very important in the G20 since the presidency from Australia up to today. I think this is continued the topic which is very important. Quality infrastructure as well as how the GI hub in this case and tracking how we are going to be able to provide support for each country to be able to develop the right policy framework for the infrastructure development. The fifth agenda on sustainable finance. This is again also quite a progress in which we have the roadmap. We're also tracking the commitment of financial sector, especially private, in providing and scaling up sustainable finance, because definitely in order for us to be able to achieve the climate change agreement on the Paris Agreement under the UNFCCC, that require participation from the private sector. So here we've already made quite a lot. And again, just to give you a footnote on this sustainable finance, it is co-chaired by United States and China, and they are providing a good leadership in pushing the agenda under the sustainable finance. So it's really a very good result, and that will be continue for the India presidency. And then the last one on international taxation. This is again, we already achieved an agreement regarding the international package, Pillar 1, Pillar 2. A slightly delay on the implementation, but I think the determination and commitment to continue implement the first and second pillar is going to be very important. As you maybe remember that Pillar 1 is related to the cross-border, especially digital company taxation, which is not only based on where the company reside or located, but also related to the where you are operating and where the revenue of your company is actually generated. The second pillar is related to the minimum taxation. I think this is going to be the two very important that will be continue to be pushed for the next India presidency. So a lot of very important progress. How we handle this presidency, I think Pak Perry and I first, we continue relentlessly convincing that G20 is an important and truly asset for the global economy, especially for cooperation. This is a premier forum. It was created during the financial crisis that show a leadership and response needed. And I think this effectiveness need to be continued maintained. And I think this is how we communicate with all the G20 members to convince them that this is a truly forum and platform for all of us to be able to continue, stay united, regardless the differences. The second one is, I think, despite geopolitical, a lot of area, especially on the finance track, is actually, we have a lot of agreement. That is really important. And many, even wherever they are positioned, in terms of this geopolitical conflict, they actually want to see finance track, especially to be continue talking about the foundation on the economy and finance that need to be preserved. So that's really a very good and strong. Third, we receive huge support from not only members but international organization to prepare for many of the technical work, and that's the more that you discuss on the technical, the less political, and then the more you are going to bridge the gap. The fourth one, which is very important, especially Paperi, is always continuously promoting Indonesia culture, cuisine, coffee. That is actually bridging the gap through the non, which is, I think, that is also very, very important in contributing what you call it, the communication among the member. I think that's the most important. On 2023, I'm not commenting on that. Minister Nirmala has already also outlined what is the agenda, so it will be ethical to then asking the India, but we're really supporting India presidency and their agenda. A lot of the issue is the continuation, which I think is really welcome because a lot of them will become an issue which is also critically important, especially entering 2023, which is still going to be quite a challenging economic situation. So that's Bapak.
Okay. Thank you for the first question. Of course, foreign exchange volatility is only one problem of global economic challenges. If we're facing many complex issues, then we need to resort to a number of instruments. This is what Indonesia presidency continue promoting, to use a policy mix. On the central bank policy mix, one, of course, as I already mentioned, the G20 central bank continue to aim to tackle the increasing inflation by a credible interest rate response to tackle inflation expectation and to bring down price stability, to calibrate the pace of monetary tightening in data-dependent and clearly communicated manner. Of course, how each central bank will address depending on domestic condition. That's one. Second, we need to also address the market volatility through exchange rate stability. And how to do that, of course, depending on respective countries. But there's understanding on that. The issue also on the capital flows management. This is also being discussed, and that will be also a part of how to ensure the stability through the policy make in the central bank. Interest rate response, exchange rate stability, as well as capital flows management. This is the work under the IMF integrated policy framework, which is Indonesia already practicing since 2020. We already practicing that, 2010, my apology, that we are practicing central bank policy mix that we also voicing through this G20. But of course, monetary policy of the central bank only also a part of the policy mix. Minister Sri Mulyani already mentioned the need for close coordination between monetary policy of the central bank and fiscal policy of the government, with a respective adherence toward independency of the central bank. I think that's my answer to the first question. I hope that clarify. Second, just to add what Minister Sri Mulyani already mentioned on how Indonesia presidency achieved so many under this G20 leadership, so many progress throughout the year, especially since July. As we already communicate, Indonesia have 6 priority agenda on the normalization, on the, of course, scaring effect, on the payment system digitalization, inclusion, green economy, and international taxation. Let me just a number of significant progress that we achieved since July. We have area of 13 progress. Let me just mention a number of them. One, I already mentioned, the need the national economic policy mix. This is to address the current challenge. When we are facing a many complex challenge, then the coordination, well calibrated, the policy mix of fiscal, monetary, as well as also a financial sector is important. I think that's number one. On the financial sector, I already mentioned a number of significant progress. How regulation and supervisory action to what crypto asset. Advancing in the cross-border payment system, including also how ASEAN 5, Indonesia presidency leading the ASEAN 5 to have a cross-border connectivity and the QR, fast payment, local currency. This is also a number of progress, including also still on the digitalization is CBDC. The proposal on the design of CDGC, how CBDC harnessing inclusion, as well as future cross-border CBDC. I think there's a number of progress. And on the inclusion, there's also a number of progress that to support the global economic recovery, harnessing, promoting financial inclusion through especially digitalization is one of the lesson and being also implemented in a number of members of the G20. There is also a number of progress, referring to the last question, which is on a number of issues to address the debt issues. There is also agreement G20 welcoming the pledges of 0.6 billion US dollar, a part of a special drawing right channeling through the voluntary channeling of SDR. This is a part of 100 billion US dollar. The ambition to address as international financial architecture to also to stand ready to help low-income and vulnerable countries to rebuild their economy. There's also progress of resilient and sustainable trust under the IMF. This is where we welcome the operation of RST, resilient and sustainable trust, to help eligible low-income countries, small state and vulnerable middle-income countries to address longer-term structural challenges that pose macroeconomic risks, including those stemming from pandemic and climate change. On the general review of quota 16 of the IMF, we will also continue progressing discussion on those aspects. I think those among significant progress and deliverable what Indonesia presidency continue advancing under the G20. And also relating to resolving the debt issues. I think those my complementing for the Minister Simani already mentioned, and this is also once again Indonesia to India next presidency 2023. We will continue supporting fully the success of India presidency. A number of legacy already being achieved this year, and we also looking forward. This will be also being progressing next year, including one on the how the policy mix, second on the financial sector, cross-border payment connectivity, CBDCs, as well as inclusion. I just stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister and Governor. My apology because we cannot continue to the second session because of very limited time that we have, because we have to move to another session. Thank you so much for the question, and again, thank you so much, Minister and Governor, for this opportunity. So see you in Bali for the 2022 Bali Summit, November 15. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The IMF press briefing for the Western Hemisphere's Department will be commencing shortly. You're welcome to stay in the room if you like. The Western Hemisphere's press briefing will be